your first time joining us, welcome to the Mortgage Innovators Podcast, where we deliver fresh and hopefully entertaining insights on all things mortgage and the innovation propelling our industry forward. My name is Michael Guidotti with American Pacific Mortgage, and every Tuesday you can find our rotating group of co-hosts who all share their own unique connection to the industry. This week, I'm joined by my amazing co-host, Sue Woodard. Welcome, Sue.
Hey, how you doing?
Great. And this week, we're starting a new series called Tech Stack 101. Each episode in the month of September, we're focusing on how to better understand, build, and or upgrade technology stacks in the mortgage process. Before we get into the episode, we're excited to announce that the Mortgage Innovators Conference will be held on June 14th and 15th, 2023 at the Hilton Anaheim. The theme this year is Innovators Unite. And if you want more information, head to mortgageinnovators.com/conference to keep up to date with everything MIC 23. And this week, we are super excited to welcome Josh Lehr with Total Expert. Welcome, Josh.
Thanks, Michael. Sue, I'm glad to be here today. It was an exciting conversation, getting to talk about tech.
Yeah, well, we knew you'd be one of the best out there to talk about it. And I know it's not probably the first time you've been called Josh Lehr. It's actually Josh Lehr. But we have such a problem mispronouncing last names on our podcast. It's kind of part of like our shtick now, you know?
Yeah, it was hard for me to pronounce it wrong because I knew the right way to say it. But I said, just to keep up this trend, I better throw a little wrench in there.
Yeah, exactly. We've got a long history of that. But Josh, we're super glad that you're here, especially on this topic.
Yeah, well, let's jump right in. And I think the key is when we're talking about tech stack, we got to start with what's the definition of it as it relates to the mortgage process?
Yeah, you can go a lot of different ways with that. When I think about the tech stack, it's really the unique set of software that your organization has that's bringing you, your users, your real estate partners, and your customers together to build that unique experience that is your lending experience, right? And I think we want to define it that way because not every tech stack is the same. And everybody's process is different. So it requires different pieces depending on how hands-on your process is or how digital it is potentially, right? And I don't think there's any right or wrong tech stack. It's just a matter of what works for each one of these lenders.
One of the things actually I would add to that I think is interesting when we talk about a tech stack, and I love what you just said, is it's there's not necessarily a right or wrong, although we've probably all seen a few that, have some chinks in the bricks. But I always think of a tech stack as this neatly stack of like Legos on top of each other because they're all interconnected and integrated, but that's not always the case either. So it'll be kind of fun as we have this conversation, kind of looking and talking a little bit, Josh, from your point of view, because I know you're very involved on this front about how important those integrations are between all the different pieces of the tech stack.
100%. I would even add on, like, as we talk about tech stack too, and those pieces that come together, it's not only about the pieces that are visible to those end users or to the customers, but those pieces working in the background on their behalf as well, right? You think about those things that are happening, that automation, or even those ordering systems that you're leveraging. If those systems start to fall down in your tech stack, those are going to be noticed outwardly by your customers and by your users. So it's important to pay attention not only to those customer-facing technologies in the tech stack, but also those back-end systems that support the entire process.
I think that's such a good point that you just brought up, because I think so often when we talk about the tech stack, we're thinking of more the sales-facing pieces, right? The things that the loan officers and the borrowers are interacting with. But there's so many that go behind the scenes. It's probably even more that are behind the scenes than what are forward-facing. And where do those fit in, and how is that data pushing over to the front end and the sales team? So I think that that's a really good point. So as we get into it, some of the essential technologies that all mortgage companies should incorporate. And I think right now, especially with what's going on in the market, right? The needs versus the extras, or, the must-haves versus the nice-to-haves. So what are some of your thoughts on that, Josh?
So, when I think about the tech stack, I always start at the bottom. I think everybody does with the loan origination system, right? Because that's primarily where the loan has been processed for, over the course of time. And then from there, you start to layer on the additional systems, whether they're an ancillary tool within the loan origination system or a best in breed-ish type tool, or maybe you're using a third-party technology. So layering on that pricing engine, making sure that you have the ability to price and lock your loans. The point of sale has become really, I think, one of the staples as well. That more digital facing, forward facing application allows loan officers and consumers to work through the application. Being a total expert, obviously I have to say CRM, marketing automation, it's become paramount, to be driving a great customer experience. And then we talk about some of the back end systems too that layer in. We talk about the fees, the appraisal management, right? I think even, as you talk more on the digital side, some of these, lead generation pieces are becoming more fundamental as a need than an extra that you're going to have to see, because more and more consumers are shopping online, and they have been, right? It's one of those things we've seen accelerated through the pandemic too, right? More and more consumers online. That's the primary source anymore of where these consumers are shopping, and we need to make sure that we're present there. So a lot of that technology for lead source origination is a requirement now. And
you know what, Josh, I love that you brought up the fact that what might be needs right now might have been considered extras over the past couple of years. I know you've heard me talk about this quite a bit. I've talked about it on this podcast. I've done some writing about it in the market. That just, as everybody is taking a good hard look at their tech stack and saying, what is critical to our business right now? You can't look at usage, for example, or logins over the past couple of years and say, oh, well, loan officers weren't logging into this, so let's throw it out, because it could be exactly what is needed right now for exactly the point you just made, Josh, for lead generation. And maybe, looking at the database and kind of mining it for leads and opportunities and raising those up to the loan officers that maybe wasn't really as needed in the last couple of years when, people are standing in a money machine. There are so many deals, that they can't even keep up when, times have changed. And now it's important to revisit what is actually a need versus what might be considered an extra.
Yeah. Well, I like to talk about like the sales muscle, right? Like it's just like working out. Like when you start to work out, you stop working out, maybe you skip leg day for a month, your legs start to get weak, right? You don't remember how to use them. You can't lift the same amount of weight. So you think about the sales process. That's what we saw, right? When it was refis, and like you said, money was falling out of the sky, people were processing loans, just trying to keep up. That was one thing, but now we're back in sales mode, right? So we saw that transition where we didn't, the co-marketing tool I think has always been a strong piece of Total Expert, but even more so since rates have gone up, we've seen more people leverage that co-marketing tool because they need ways to differentiate with their real estate partners to help get more loans in the door. It's a challenging market, obviously, but it's fun to see the tools people are adopting to help drive more conversions and drive better experiences.
Yeah, I think one of the things for us, even at our company, has been really around, how we bifurcated it out between like our core stack and the add-ons. And love what you mentioned about the lead piece, because that's something, the lead generation piece. I know for us specifically, that was always kind of an add-on, and that's been something that's been talked about more and more over the last 3 or 4 months. Is just, I'm seeing people make more investments into that space just to really keep that sales cycle and that sales engine going. I love the term sales muscle because it's so true, right? The last couple of years, you've not necessarily been needing to sell the way that you are right now. And so it's getting people back into those grooves of, we're seeing more people attending our trainings on the tech stack than we have over the last couple of years. And I think it's just people really getting engaged and looking for, anything that they can to help win that extra deal.
You talk about like the digital, talking more about kind of like what's cool out there right now. You talk about some of these enablement tools, right? These engagement tools that people are using to help drive more quality engagements, right? You talk about these leads that come in from different sources. We have the higher quality lead sources that are very well developed. You have the information on them, the income, maybe credit's already been pulled, right? A lot of great detail, but then you have some of these really lightweight leads, right? You might have a name, an email, and a phone number, and that's not a lot to go off of, right? How do you arm your loan officers with the right information to actually have a good informed conversation? I think that's where you're seeing a lot of really good tools around how do you enrich that lead, right? How do you provide more information so that the loan officer can have a better conversation through that sales cycle? I think those are really exciting. And then even the tools to help them convey their message through the process.
Yeah.
So I think about tools like, Banking Bridge is one that I'm kind of near and dear to my heart because I come from the pricing world. I love it when you can see a good pricing scenario displayed to a consumer, but giving them the ability to display those types of scenarios to their consumers, or even the video engagement. You talk about BombBomb and being able to send those personal videos. I think those types of tools to help kind of enrich that lead experience, that lead application experience, are super exciting.
I just saw some interesting stats actually relative to video email that BombBomb had, where they were talking about the how much you can shorten the lead conversion time and the engagement time, from a potential target when you're using video. Because even, some of you are maybe listening to this podcast and some of you are seeing, our eyes and our faces as we're talking. And it's just different. It's just different when you do have that connection. You have that digital eye contact, but it's amazing when you see the actual dollars and cents behind how much video drives that engagement and that connection and helps you win in a much more competitive market. And, one of the things Josh, I know we'd love to get your thoughts on is, as lenders right now are kind of pulling up, and Michael, from the lender's point of view, I'd love to hear your thoughts too, is people are really kind of pulling up, evaluating their tech stack, making decisions about expenses and, where can they be really smart about where they're spending money. But as you do look at that tech stack and the things that you do actually need, when do you feel like, and Josh, maybe hear from you first about, when do you need to focus on cost and when do you need to focus on best in class?
It's a good question, and it's difficult, right? Because in times like this, we tend to focus on the quantitative, right? Because it really comes back to the numbers. But I think a lot of it is qualitative too. Like, we still have to retain our loan officers to be able to get to the point where, we are going to meet the originations we want to. And as a part of that, you have to take into account some of that quantitative as well. So how do you look at the technology and how it's actually affecting the well-being and the overall behavior of your loan officers, right? And I think that's where you have to, it's really a mix. And I don't know what the right mix is, right? You're not going to go straight to cost per funded loan. That's where we all want to go. It's the easiest way to go. It's like, how much are we doing? What's our margin? How can we make this work better? But then on the quantitative side, there is that aspect, and that's where it's like you have to look at those tools and how they're making your loan officers' lives easier, because there's already enough stress in the selling. It's like, how do you make sure that you're getting that qualitative aspect from some of these software tools?
And Michael, how do you look at that from the lender's point of view?
Right now, or the last couple of years?
Right now.
No. Yeah. It's difficult, right? I think where some of it is having the data to be able to track it. I think that historically has been one of the biggest challenges, because I think when you go best in class, right, and so you're not always necessarily using that one all-in-one solution. You're using components of different tools. You then start to get a breakdown in where each tool is plugging in, and how is that impacting the actual life cycle of that loan. We shortened our average turn time, from 23 days to closing a loan down to 19. Which are the key tools that are playing a factor into that? And so I think that's the piece that I think is still being worked on, to really understand, okay, how much impact are each of these tools having in that life cycle of the loan? So then you can really nail down that ROI. And so I think it's still in process, but it's definitely something that we're taking a hard, long look at right now.
Well, and that's probably a good segue to kind of the final thing we were going to touch on is really looking at, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is how important the integrations are. And Josh, you're an expert on that front. But, it's interesting when you look back over the last, decade, 15 years since, we've been on this digital revolution in the mortgage industry, so to speak, and had a lot of innovation. The tone has changed a little bit from, I think, early on. People were thinking, oh, it's going to be all in one. We're going to have, somebody's going to come forward and have all the solutions in a bucket. Then it kind of shifted to like, now we do need to the conversation we're having about, we need kind of the best in class, and then we're just going to have really good APIs and integrations. And now there's conversation again about like, well, is there anybody who's got a true all-in-one? And so, Josh, from your viewpoint, not that one way is necessarily right or wrong, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
It probably sounds kind of cliche, but I think the best scenario is your best in breed that looks like an all-in-one, right? And I think that drives back to the integration point. Like, how do you bring those pieces together so that your loan officer thinks it's truly one platform? Because that's the thing, is you're not, you can't be was a jack of all trades, master of none, right? You're not going to be able to get that full end-to-end experience, and you're always going to have to bring in providers or partners to help drive a better customer experience at the end of the day. So I think it is truly about how do you pull those things together and make it look like one cohesive experience. So your loan officers aren't sitting at mission control with 6 screens up, one with their loan origination, their point of sale. Maybe you have a lead prospecting tool. How can you bring that all together? I think it's super important. And that's one of the things that we've been focusing on recently is how do we expedite some of these, expedite time to value of some of these integrations and make them extremely turnkey. We're getting to the point now where we're bringing some integrations down to, 5 days turn time to get something actually running. The tools are out there to build that all-in-one experience while still taking advantage of these best-in-breed providers.
Yeah, and I think that really that's something we've really focused on as well. Still a work in progress, but things like what great tools can we integrate into another system to where then we eliminate the login. So I know that we have like two tools that are in our core stack that our loan officers don't even get logins to, because it's either integrated in through Total Expert or it's something where they're just getting notifications of it and then it pushes data into the CRM. So it's just a way that we can, to your point, exactly, limit the logins, limit the touch points that the LOs have to go through, because that's where I feel like you start to lose people, right? If I have to log into 6 systems, now I got to prioritize which ones are the most important to me. And that, by nature, then, client's going to call and agent's going to call, and I'm going to forget to do those last 3 because I don't have time to log into additional, systems. So I think that's definitely a key as we move forward.
Right.
And one thing that I've really noticed over the last couple of years, which I've been really, happy with, is even when you do have some of those all-in-one, solutions, they're still working and building out integrations with competitors that might be in some of the similar spaces. So it's really focused on the benefit to the client, which is, us. And I've really appreciated that shift that we've seen over the last couple of years.
It's an interesting point too, that because of the shift in the market, the reevaluation of tech stacks, it's also a really good time to reevaluate that customer journey, which everything was about in the last couple of years, slam and jam, get them through as fast as possible. Where now it's like, okay, there's a different customer journey we may need to consider. So we get rid of that refinance muscle memory of just, ship them through as fast as possible. And also our loan officer's journey, the employee journey, right? In terms of, to your point, how many systems are they having to touch? Where can we remove the friction point? So I love that. But Josh, any final words of wisdom for the folks listening?
No, yeah, I think it's an exciting time in technology. We talk about all of the different pieces that we can, all the different pieces of data specifically, we've seen recently that we can bring together to understand more about our customers. I think, we talk about lead generation as one channel. How can we get more leads in the door? But I think a lot of it is how do we look at our existing funnels and actually leverage the data that we have to drive more business for existing customers. And a lot of that is leveraging a lot of these third-party tools and bringing them together in that best-in-class, or, single stack experience, right? I think that's what's exciting is, and I guess what I'd leave everybody with is, as you look at your technology, think about not only the technology, but the data that it's providing, because there's so much rich data there to provide an awesome customer experience and, generate a lot more business as well.
Absolutely.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, Josh, for being on today. We really appreciate you taking the time and sharing some of your insights with us. Sue, as always, thank you, my friend. And thank you all for listening to today's episode. If you like what you heard, make sure to subscribe to the Mortgage Innovators YouTube channel or wherever you podcast. Until next time.
Bye, everybody.